to talk about, you know, our responsibility to prove our worth as an L&D consultant. And what I really wanted to understand was proving your worth as an L&D consultant. What do you really mean by that? And why is it important to the average freelance trainer?
Okay, so when I gave you that example of that organisation where I was going in to have a look at the team leaders and what they were going to be doing, as part of the needs analysis, what we uncovered, there were sort of 10 key items that we uncovered that I suppose in general, if you looked at what the overall company's vision was, what the senior management I suppose view on it was, what their objectives were, and also what the team leaders wanted to get out of it. There were 10 key areas, and they were all sort of like measurable things because I asked them the right questions. So it was things like, well, basically, if our team leaders can handle conflict better, they will have their own team members sort of like more under control. They'll come into us, the senior management team, less often. So at the moment, and I said, okay, so how often are they coming in to see you a week and you know, you're faced with having to sort their problems out? I said, well, probably at least 2 or 3 times a week. There's sort of like big issues, but they should be dealing with them. Okay, so if we could cut that down from 2 or 3 times, you know, a week to maybe 2 or 3 times a month, you know, how would that sound? So, you know, people say, well, there's some things you can't measure and everything, but I try and ask people questions. What is it you're trying to see differently? What is it you're trying to see different in the organisation? How will you know that it's happened? And so when you start to talk about, okay, so if they're doing this less, that means that you're spending less time on them. And if you're spending less time on them, then you can immediately tie that into, well, my time is worth so much per hour. So you can see a cost saving as well. Yeah. So we had about 10 of these measures. And so what was going to happen is I wasn't going to measure these things because that wasn't the point. We had these discussions to uncover what it was that they needed to happen, and the needs analysis sort of fed into that. Key things were going to be things which would be measured before and then afterwards to see how effective the training was going to be. Now, the reason I like to work like this, firstly, it sort of feeds my engineering process type brain very nicely, thank you, because it's like an end-to-end process. But also, it means that instead of this being sort of like a one-off thing, you develop a relationship with the clients, because then they see that what you're trying to do is not just a quick fix. It's not just sort of like a sticking plaster approach. What they actually see is you're trying to help learning development. We're trying to help this training, this learning, to make changes within the organisation. So that's what I mean by actually proving your worth. It means that you're actually showing them, you're demonstrating that value. And if you do a great learning needs analysis, if you're a good detective in that needs analysis and uncover all the things that are going on, it means that the evaluation actually becomes very, very simple, and you don't even have to do it. I mean, I do sort of like sometimes look at wonder. There are lots of consultants out there who do evaluation work, but they usually go in afterwards and, you know, they're told, okay, we've run this management development program, evaluate it. And I just think, gosh, that is firstly, it's so hard. Secondly, it's so expensive as well, because it's sort of like you're trying to uncover what's happened without really knowing all of the background and everything. So for me, you know, that needs analysis is a key thing to proving your worth, because it's showing that you really care about bringing some value to the organisation. And for a freelance trainer, if you can demonstrate that you bring value, then they will keep asking you back. You then develop long-term relationships. And a very, very simple, this is a beautiful example. I love it when they're so simple, but they're not always this simple. I worked with a housing association, and I was doing a workshop, 2-day workshop for their facilitators. They weren't trainers full-time, they were actually subject matter experts who were going to facilitate on various topics within the organisation, and some of them had never facilitated before. Now, the reason that they were doing it was a business need to cut costs, and they usually had external people to do this training. So in training these people up, if they did just 2 days worth of training per year, and normally they would pay somebody, say, £1,000 a day. So the 10 people that were on this workshop, if they did just 2 days worth of training a year, that's 2 times 10, which is 20, and £1,000, they would save the organisation £20,000 a year.
Wow.
And that's what they only did 2 days. And that's so simple. It's just beautiful, though, isn't it? It's great when you get something like that that you can quote.
Yeah.
So that really does show. Now, when you actually can demonstrate something and show something, I mean, you know, at the end of the day, we'll have to measure that. It's coming up to, I think, it's about 7 months, I think, since I did the program. So in about 5 months' time, we'll be measuring to see how much training people have done in actual fact, because that's the unknown. You don't know how much people are going to do. So you have a stab at it. But when it comes to having conversations about, you know, how much I'm going to charge, it's then easy to say, well, if we're going to save £20,000 and Krystyna charges X amount, then as long as that's less than that, then it makes sense, you know. So you can prove your value, because it's incredibly difficult sometimes when people look at what your daily rate will be. And we all know as trainers, and especially freelance consultants, we charge a daily rate most of the time, and I tend not to now. It tends to be per project, because it makes more sense, because I tell people what it is that they're going to get for the project, and then I give them a quote for the project, because the daily rate thing just became a distraction. And people would say, you charge what for a day? And we all know that, you know, we do so much. You know, for every single 1 day of delivery, there's so much preparation that goes into it.
Yeah.
And because I do like pre-work and post-work as well, so I tend to sort of like charge per project, but it helps to then justify, you know, what you're asking them to invest in you. And also you can then do the same calculation afterwards, you know, and say, okay, so it wasn't quite the 20,000, but actually it's still a really good return on investment. Yeah. And actually that's just the first year, but it's going to be the next year and the next year and the next year as well.
Yeah, and I know that that's really an important point that you made there, because I know that many of the trainers that I work with, you know, people who come on my workshops and who are in my mentoring programs and so on, they do, you know, sometimes feel uncomfortable about charging, you know, what they feel they're worth. And so doing it this way you can instantly see how that can enable somebody to feel far more confident about, you know, about their pricing structure, because you could demonstrate the value that organisation is going to get through working with you, which is brilliant. And also, I can also see from what you're saying that, you know, taking this approach is obviously going to enable you to get business far more easily, and more importantly, enable you to get repeat business as well, which is brilliant.
Yes, yeah, and also you can use it, you know, in terms of you've got, you know, testimonials and case studies. You've got much more material there for, you know, providing something like that. Now, I've got to say that, you know, not all clients are willing necessarily to go to that degree, and that does surprise me. You know, I had a client not that long ago, and they said, well, we just want our trainers to be more excited and more engaged and more, you know, just generally more excited about the training. And hard as I tried to sort of think, yeah, but what difference will that make to the organisation? They just said, well, this is what we want, Krystyna, you know, and so that's what I delivered. And, you know, they got that as well. But, you know, I think if you can get clients looking that way, they will ask you back when they see your worth as well, when you can demonstrate it. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. So, where do you feel that trainers might be missing a trick when working with corporates?
I think it's just all too easy when a client sort of says, well, we want this, we want it in a month's time, and we want it for this group of people. It's all too easy because trainers tend to be people. They like people and want to please people.